And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 86, the Kevin Miller episode, the toughness episode. This is going to be a gritty, tough, injured for half the season kind of episode. This is going to be like. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. And we are recording this again before the game against the Blackhawks on Thursday night. I will not predict what happens in the game because I did that on Monday.
Didn't go well.
Didn't go well. People had no problem letting me know in the YouTube comment sections, as I would expect. I said I thought they would win. They actually almost did. And then they, for the third time in 4 games, gave up a goal with 30 seconds left, which is kind of becoming an issue, which it's not on the docket today, so we're not going to get to it. There's some more fun, important things to talk about. But the giving up goals with 30 seconds left, not the greatest strategy in the world, I would say.
It's not what you're looking for, that's for sure. It's better to have it happen now in the dog days of winter, early spring, than late spring when the playoffs are finally here. Am I going to hit the panic button? Probably not. I'm not really fretting about it too much. It seems like the Bruins really aren't. They're more or less, I don't think they're taking the shit happens approach. That's probably more of the stance I'm taking. But, they kind of mentioned with that Kings game, like, yeah, McAvoy maybe should have been inside a bit more, but also was, deflected puck, batted down, kind of fell right on Moore's stick. Like, again, shit happens. But if it happens again to a team like the Blackhawks, not great. But all in considered, Bruins 7-1-1. I guess could be 9-0-0 if something's changed there a little bit. But all in considered, they're still chugging along. So hopefully they can kind of put that in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, I was doing the unthinkable. I was listening to Felger and Maz the other day, and they were trying to dole out blame for the goal against the Kings in the final minute. And I'm thinking to myself, they're like, well, Bergeron lost the draw. And I'm like, well, still, I mean, the guy's like 62% on his faceoffs. And you also take into account the fact the puck was deflected and just landed on his stick in front of the net. I mean, like, there's not much you can do to prevent that. But at any rate, this episode is all about the rumors, which is fun, right? This is
the Fleetwood Mac episode.
Yeah, Fleetwood Mac episode. Or the Adele episode, rumor has it. So lots of rumors today. And we will start with something you wrote about a couple weeks ago now, about why the Bruins should be hesitant on Brock Boeser. Again, Boeser's a name who has been thrown around in trade rumors now for what feels like forever. The Bruins have always been a team who was, Boeser would be a perfect fit for. And you uncovered some reasons contractually as well as just overall play that might kind of hint at why probably not the best idea for Bruins to go after.
Yeah, and I think you look at the situation and, again, you look at it kind of on paper, makes a lot of sense. He's a shot-first winger. He's actually surprised he's never had 30 goals. He's come very close, and he's had a few seasons where he's had, 26 goals over 65 games. So he's gotten very close to that, and he is a good, solid player. But when you look at, I think, what the appeal for him is, as opposed to maybe weighing that with the actual production, I think it's a little bit kind of a buyer beware there in that situation. And again, if you ask me which Vancouver guy is probably going to get traded, I'd probably say it's Boeser. I think Garland would be a perfect fit in terms of I think probably a more effective player at even strength 5-on-5, and he's got a better contract. But and also at this point, I don't think JT Miller's moving. I think he had another good game recently. I think afterwards, Bruce Boudreau was like, yeah, he's the leader, one of the leaders of this team. Like, we want to have him here. So I could see them keeping him. And if Vancouver can't get it together next year and they fall off again, then you deal him. He's still under contract for a year, so I don't think Miller's getting moved. So if Boeser's the first guy that prioritize, it makes sense because you're probably moving DeBrusk, or at least they want to, and you need to find someone to slot in there on that top line. But I think for Boeser, I guess we can look probably first at the actual production. I think he's got 33 points on the year. Not too bad. However, out of those 33 points, 13 of them were at 5-on-5 play. And this is granted a few days ago, so he might have had a game or two since then, but 33
points. 34 at this point. So
yeah,
it's not that much.
Not drastic. But out of those 33 points, 13 of them came at 5-on-5 play, which is not great. If you looked at the time I posted this story on Monday, 13 5-on-5 points would I think be 11th on the Bruins right now, which is not great.
That's good.
Guys like I think DeBrusk has 19 5-on-5 points. Craig Smith has 18. Matt Grzelcyk has more 5-on-5 points. Brendan Carlo has 10, which having 3 more
Wow.
than them is not great. And I believe Curtis Lazar has 12. So Brock Boeser, top 6 forward, has 1 more 5-on-5 point than Curtis Lazar. Again, you could make the argument that you put Boeser with Bergeron and Marchand, it probably evens out. He'll get a spike in production. True, but he's been a top 6 guy for Vancouver for a couple of years now, and it's not like he's had random guys up there, whether it's Miller, Pedersen, all those guys. They've got talent on that Vancouver team. So the 5-on-5 production's pretty worrisome in terms of that, but then I think you have to look at that contract and the cap flexibility and what have you, because we've talked about it before with Jake DeBrusk, why some teams are probably hesitant to trade for him, even though his baseline production's there. It's that contract, whether it's the $4.4 million qualifying offer or just the headache of acquiring this guy with, up and down production and having to work on whatever that new contract is. And Brock Boeser's kind of in the same boat, if not the fact that it's worse because of his contract, because he's making $5.8 million this year, so he's due for a raise anyway as an RFA. And if you want to send him a qualifying offer, his qualifying offer is $7.5 million, which if you're the Bruins, and I don't think another top 6 wing is the only move you want to make both this year and in the years ahead. You don't want Brock Boeser, who's a guy who gets a lot of his points off the power play, to be taking up $7.5 million in cap space. And again, Bruins don't have to sign him to that. Like, you'd ideally want to work on a long-term contract so he doesn't just settle for a 1-year deal. But it's still going to be what, $6.5 million is what he's going to hold on to. So I think for the Bruins, whether it's trying to acquire a guy like Garland, who his 5-on-5 points, 28, which would be second on the Bruins. He's under contract through 2026 at 4.8, so a lot more manageable there. Or even just any other winger who's out there who is a guy that can give you 20 goals, 40 points. Anyone like that, I think, could slot in well with Marchand and Bergeron. So as much as Boeser projects as a very intriguing player, a guy that has 30-goal potential, I think when you look at that contract plus kind of the, delving deeper into those stats, I think it's best probably to move on and not focus on a guy like that.
To me, the contract's the biggest thing. Again, $7.5 million for someone who has a really tough time producing offensively at 5-on-5. Again, he's right now he's playing with Tanner Pearson and JT Miller up in Vancouver, that's a very good line to be on. You should be producing at 5-on-5, and it kind of makes you think, you would replace DeBrusk with Boeser, who is maybe a little bit better than DeBrusk, but still very inconsistent. And on top of that, is making a lot more money. So again, to me, I kind of go back to what you said in the sense that I don't think Boeser really makes a lot of sense, just given all those things. Again, I know he's kind of good shot, and he's, as you said, 30-goal potential, but to me, it's just a little bit better than DeBrusk. I think you need a lot better than DeBrusk or someone like a Conor Garland. And speaking of different guys that they might be in on, Jakob Chychrun, which has been
back.
It's like it's cycle. It comes back. It comes, goes in and out. But it's funny because, as we've said a few times now, since this road trip happened, that things have changed for the Bruins in the sense, it feels like they could get by with the centers they have, and they might need a winger, but they also they would be so improved with a top 4 defenseman, and Chychrun is a legit top 4 defenseman, but it feels like the price is still so high for that dude, because again, he's under contract for so long at a good price.
Yeah, no, and I think it's one of those things where I don't think Arizona, even though it seems like they've got so many suitors, I think they're not going to, the pressure's not there for them to sell him this year if they think the offers that they're getting aren't fitting what they're looking to get from a guy who, again, as you said, it's going to be worth a lot. He's 23, top 4 guy, eats a ton of minutes. And from the Bruins, long-term goals, a guy like Chychrun does make plenty of sense, right? I mean, if your top 4 for the next 3-4 years at a minimum is McAvoy, Chychrun, Grzelcyk, Carlo, you're doing pretty well. Like, you've got a pretty good decor to build off of. So it makes plenty of sense in that regard. And even though Chychrun's numbers maybe have dropped a little bit, granted he's on a bad Arizona team, but he's still a guy that eats.
They're on a heater of late.
That is true. Yeah, they're scoring an absurd amount of goals. So even a guy like Schmaltz, who I think would be like a good fit for like if you're acquiring a guy for cheap, ain't gonna be cheap anymore. He's got like 13 points in 2 games, so yeah, that's like we have to give a little bit more to get him now. But you look at Chychrun and what he brings, especially like with that shot that he has. Like it's definitely something that adds a different dynamic, even offensively, to this team. But you just look at what the cost is for these guys, and when we were like discussing Chychrun like way back, one of the issues I think I had with it was, all right, I think you have to give up Swayman for it, and I think that's a non-starter for the Bruins. So if you're in a situation like that, and obviously Swayman's off the board now, like literally Swayman's your number one guy, Rask is retired, so you don't have that decision to make anymore. It's kind of out of your hands. You've got Swayman in net; he's your number one. So what do you have an offer that's going to outbid a team like Florida? Like, and if it is, it's what, a first round pick, maybe another pick, like probably one of definitely one of Lorai Lysell. Like they're going to absolutely get
I would
one
think
of those two guys.
Lorai just because it's a left shot defenseman.
Yeah, like anything like that. Like, and I think the bigger issue there is one, you're allocating all of your assets to one player, which if you think Chychrun's the missing piece, then maybe it's worth it. But then you're out of the running for, a guy like Hertl or a guy like another top 6 guy, unless like you want to give up future first down the road to acquire maybe another guy like that, which maybe is the case. But you're putting kind of more or less all your eggs in one basket. If it's a guy like Chychrun, who I think for the Bruins, it just comes down to whether or not you think he's kind of that missing piece on that roster. And again, as I said, he's a foundational piece for this team going forward. If you acquire him, it's just whether or not it's worth doing that or improving all the other areas of your roster, which are still vital. Like, I don't think Hertl will cost nearly as much because he's a rental, but you look at where his importance is. Yeah, they could definitely use a 2C, especially in the years ahead. So it's a tough balancing act. And I think for me, even though the Bruins are still kicking the tires, I just don't see how they have the assets to outbid a team like I feel like Florida makes so much sense in terms of their win now window. They've got Knight that they can move if they so please, because they signed Bobrovsky the same year, which made no sense in the first place. I guess now it makes sense, but
they get the last laugh.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a complicated situation, but I still just don't think they have the means to pry him out of Arizona, at least unless Armstrong has a lower asking price as we get closer to the deadline.
Can you imagine a Florida defensive core of Chychrun, Ekblad, Uyghur? Am I missing anybody? But like
those
three.
Those are the big guns. Yeah, I mean, you're
that's
you're already
ridiculous.
Good. Yeah.
And so it's funny though because as you were talking, I was thinking about this with Lorai. If you had to give up Lorai to get Chychrun, because I think Swayman's a non-starter, right?
Yeah.
You can't deal Swayman at this point; he's off the table. But if it was Lorai, right? If it came down to if the Coyotes said we want Lorai and we want a package centered around Mason Lorai, Chychrun's your top 4 left shot defenseman now for years, right?
Yeah.
Like you have him. He's going to impact you for a while.
Yeah.
You're kind of hoping Lorai becomes a Jakob Chychrun.
Yeah.
Maybe in that sense, that's when you do say, hey, you know what? We're going to part with this guy for someone who's also young and really talented and has a really high ceiling in a guy like Chychrun. So maybe that's the move. Maybe you could do that. Just given that, again, you're trading a future potential left shot stud defenseman for a current and young, still very young. How old's Chychrun? Is he 23, 24? 23. He's my age, which is ridiculous. He's throw me out there.
Yes.
But I do think, again, like, then in that sense, trading Lorai for him would make sense. You did a great TikTok about a day in the life of your being a Bruins beat reporter. First of all, I love someone commented. I thought that the person said I thought they beat a reporter. I thought the Bruins beat up a reporter.
There was
that was terrific.
There was like one time I wrote something where someone I think commented. I think it was like what I do in a day in terms of like the actual content I put out that's beyond podcasting and tweets. And I had like, well, I do like a gamer. And they're like, what the fuck's a gamer? I'm like, a game story. Like it's, there's some things like that I realized probably doesn't. So as soon as I had beat reporter, I'm like, maybe I should just have like writer or something like that. Just gotta too much terminology.
they're like Charlie McAvoy's upstairs, just like beating the crap out of you on the ninth floor. And then someone also said that accent is so annoying, and then someone replied, "Yeah, it's so fake."
It is annoying. I can admit that.
No,
but
it's not. No, it's not. That is not true. And what's also very not true is it's not fake. That was my favorite. I almost replied to it, then I was like, I'm not getting in a TikTok like.
Yeah, please
spat.
don't. Please
Like,
don't
I'm
fight
just-
with like
I'm not doing that.
It's not worth it. It's never worth it.
No.
Whether it's Twitter, TikTok, anything like that.
I did it once on an Instagram post, and I just was like, it feels wrong.
No one ever looks good.
I'm preying on the stupid.
Yes.
But yes, no, great TikTok. Make sure to go follow you over there on TikTok. But it's funny. We're discussing guys who the Bruins are like, could work with, should get. There's one guy though who the Bruins have actually been rumored to be really like in on, and that's Jakob Middleton, defenseman of the San Jose Sharks. 6'3", left shot defenseman, 8 points in I think 37 games this year. He is a +2, so that is something for a San Jose Sharks team that is, middle of the pack and not great. He's taking up my man Mario Ferraro's playing time though, so it's not great. Can't have that happen. But nonetheless, this kind of feels like a guy they would be in on. This feels kind of like a Mike Riley move. I know they're very different types of defensemen, but it's a very off the board kind of defenseman, right? Where it's not someone who everyone's focused on. It's someone who off the radar, but probably could come in and make like a legitimate impact.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we've talked about. This has probably shifted a little bit now where maybe 2C isn't as much of a priority. I still think I think we'll talk about Hertl in a little bit, but if he's out there, you still go after him. But let's say if the Bruins opt to not acquire a true top 4 guy like a Chychrun or a Lindholm or something like that, I think, we've talked about it before. The most logical thing to do is just beef up your depth further down in the lineup, and someone that's a little bit of a different dynamics. It's a big-bodied guy that makes it tough to get inside. Like the guys whose value definitely comes out, I think, a little bit more in the postseason, and I think Middleton makes plenty of sense in that regard. It's like what we've talked about with like Calvin DeHaan or Justin Braun as someone who's like, maybe
Scott Mayfield even.
Yeah, exactly. Someone who, especially like Braun, who's like 35, like, what you're getting with him. He's just a simple defender, but you're also not mortgaging your future assets for him. So we'll see how much Middleton be worth. I mean, he's still young, but it's only his like kind of first real season in the NHL. So I don't know how much he's exactly going to cost, but if he's like your third pairing guy, it's pretty good. I mean, he's chipped in well. He's played with like Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns quite a bit this season. Part of that PK, which I think is second in the league. So I mean, there's value there for a player like that. I think the only issue is he's a left shot guy. So it's, if you acquire Jakob Chychrun, you make room. Like obviously that makes sense, right? But for Middleton, is it, can he play on the right side? I mean, if you've got like a third pairing of Forbort and Middleton as like just like 2 big guys down there, especially once the game translates to the playoffs, could work. It's just whether or not those pieces fit, whether you're maximizing your value by putting him on his weak side and seeing how that works out. So he's definitely an intriguing piece. And if the Bruins come out of this without Chychrun or Lindholm, but they upgrade that top 6 and add a guy like Middleton to shore up that depth, even if he's a guy that cycles in and out, just having that depth there on defense could go a long way. So would not be surprised at all if they make a play for him, because I think he's a guy who, even though you don't want to say he's a flash in the pan because it's his first year, but you look at his numbers too. So many times you look at these kind of stay-at-home guys or guys who are brought in for kind of that grit, and you look at their like underlying numbers and you're like, okay, like he's pretty good. Like he's been solid in his own zone.
Like a Derek Forbort.
Yeah. So like you have one of those situations where it seems like Middleton's kind of putting it all together this year. So if he's even just like a depth piece to add, would definitely help your team when you get to the playoffs.
See, the one thing is though, I agree. I think it'd be good to add, but you look at the left side on D, and there's so many guys on that side, and they're all in the same area, right? No one, aside from Grizzly, no one's really standing out. I know Riley's worked fairly well with McAvoy. I know the numbers are nowhere near what they are with Grizzly and McAvoy, but still like well enough. You also have Forbort. When Vakanainen returns, you have him. John Moore is like somewhere. You have these options on the left side, and it feels like if you just add to it, you're just kind of like adding just more potential people that are sitting out. Feels like finding a Jakob Middleton on the right side would be more of like the play. But again, there's time. You never know what's going to happen with that. Clifton, by the way, has quietly been fairly solid the past bunch of weeks. Like he's been pretty stable back there again, and nothing crazy, nothing really bad. I don't know if you can trust him in the long term or anything like that. But if that's the worst case scenario, not terrible, right? I mean, he's been fine. He's stable enough. Um, but a team that might have what you're looking for on D is the Anaheim Ducks, who have kind of now figured out, like, hey, we were good for a bit. It was fun, but we're looking to probably sell off our UFAs. And their UFAs are Rickard Rakell, longtime Bruin rumor, linked to the Bruins. It's been forever. It's been since like 2018.
Feels like it.
Hampus Lindholm and Josh Manson. Again, you got a U of A forward, a left defenseman, and a right defenseman in there. Feels like the one you could maybe come away with two guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, let's say it's DeBrusk going back, which would actually maybe make sense for the Ducks if you're looking at, all right, we've got this good young core. We're trying to sell off these pieces, keep cap flexibility. Like a guy like DeBrusk, if you want to sign him, offers value there in terms of just having him long term. If you're able to sign him to a contract, he's out west, he's in Cali. Seems like it would work out for everyone in that regard. So, that could be a situation
Lots of
where
parking.
I could see. Yes, exactly. The most important thing, a lot of parking. But I think you look at DeBrusk as being a potential piece there for Anaheim, and I think for the Bruins, it'd be dependent on whether or not you get a guy like Manson or a guy like Rakell to maybe sign long term, because I don't think you want to trade for a guy that's a rental. And you look at where those pieces fit, makes a lot of sense, right? Like Rakell, put him with Marchand and Bergeron. I know he's had injuries in the past, but he's also a guy that's had 2 30-goal seasons. Even if he's a guy that slots in there on that top line, as we've said numerous times on this podcast, you put most people with Marchand and Bergeron, they're probably going to be pretty good. So I'm sure Rickard Rakell would be more than happy there. And again, that allows you to balance out the rest of your lineup, whether that's keeping Smith, especially on that third line. And then Manson's a guy that's interesting. Like his contract right now, you might have to have Anaheim eat some money, which means you've got a situation where you've got to, maybe give them, sweeten the pot more or less to have them eat some money. Because I think his cap's like 4.5. But if you look at what he brings in terms of like solidifying that third pairing right side, like you're good to go there. Like he's not maybe the most physically intimidating guy, but he's a guy that has logged heavy minutes, knows how to play. Like he's a solid piece there, especially if it's a third pairing spot. So that could be definitely a situation I see where it's like DeBrusk and maybe it's a first and you get one of those guys locked up long term. Like that could be a situation where it improves the team. So obviously Anaheim's under new management, but they've traded plenty of times in the past. So I could definitely see that being a situation and an actual logical spot for DeBrusk, especially.
Yeah, I mean, again, Rakell and Manson, as you said, would fit perfectly with this team where it's going. Like, Lindholm's kind of a rental, but the other two, I mean, again, like you shore up the right side on D, third pairing, and then you also have, I mean, again, McAvoy, Carlo, Manson is your right side. That's pretty damn good.
Yes.
And then if you can get Rakell up with guys, I mean, remember when Rakell used to be with like Getzlaf and stuff? I mean, again, like it worked. Like Rakell would be terrific with Marchand and Bergeron. The Bruins should just start funneling first round picks to the Ducks every few years, for their like sell off pieces at Kasha, Nick Ritchie. By the way, did you see that Nick Ritchie video he did with the Coyotes?
Of course, it was electric.
Yeah, it's his guilty pleasure is watching the Rocky movies. That's a real guilty pleasure.
Hell yeah.
The guy lives on the edge.
Yes.
And he's like, I have no superstitions, but I have to take a nap. And I was like, that's the most Nick Ritchie shit I've ever heard.
Yes.
It has to take a nap. Never change. No, I hope he never changes. One of them needs to become a center. So then you have a line of like Louis Eriksson, Nick Ritchie, Phil Kessel. Petrov McGuire the back of his head would blow off.
I assume Petrov McGuire is like waiting in line for tickets for Saturday's game anyway. Like, he's definitely got to be there.
Yeah, 100% has to be. It's such a I hope there's gonna be so many Bruins tribute videos. Kessel, Ritchie, Eriksson,
Louis,
yeah, there should be so many. I can't wait. But anyways, the best fit though for the Bruins at the deadline, if you had the most ideal fit, Chychrun is like 2, but number 1 is really Tomas Hertl. And it feels like he is the guy, and he's getting circled back again because the Sharks are committed to winning, and they want to re-sign him, but they have to know soon. Like, again, this is not like they would like to get something for him if he's not going to re-sign. And you could get a lot for Tomas Hertl. You get a lot, and it's going to be coming around soon. And I saw an interesting thing about Hertl because The Athletic did a thing on it. And they were mentioning how if the Bruins didn't want to give up a first for Hertl, which would be really difficult to imagine not giving up a first, but if they did, they didn't want to give up a first. They mentioned a trade package of being either one of Studnicka or Beecher, DeBrusk, and a draft pick or two. So like maybe 2 second-round picks or a second and a third or something like that. If that was the deal, if the deal was Studnicka, DeBrusk,
Yes. Yes.
I would do that yesterday.
Yes.
I would drive them to the airport. I would facilitate it myself, which is why I don't think that's going to be the package, because there's so many teams who can offer so much more for Hertl. But when you look at just the fit Tomas Hertl would be pretty damn good.
Yeah, I still think it's one of those things where, I know Eric Hall is playing great right now, and if they don't get another 2C and they get to the playoffs and Hall is playing great, which he's got also 2 great wingers, and compliment to Hall himself that he's catered his game to really know when to kind of like give the puck up, and when he's got these 2 dynamic guys on his wing, it's worked very well. So, it's not to say that they're going to completely implode if they don't shore up that 2C, but I just look ahead to this team, and whether it's what we talked about with Chychrun, where it's a guy that you need for the foundational piece going forward, you need a legit 2C or a 1C in the coming years. And if Bergeron's back next year and you've got Hertl at 2C for the foreseeable future, you're ready to, not, I don't want to say run it back because we don't know what this team's going to do, but they're going to be right there in the mix again if they have a guy like Hertl there. Yeah, like they'll be right there. And if Bergeron does retire, you at the very least have a 1C ready to roll in Hertl, who's still in the prime of his career. So, again, I think it's going to be a first and more. I don't know if like it's necessarily going to be like a Lori Lysell that'll take for a rental like him. You'd hope not, even though we'll see what the bidding war would be if San Jose is not able to sign him. But if he's available, which I assume we'll probably find out by some point, probably early next week, if they can't get him to sign or commit, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Because I mean, I if he's available and he falls, through your fingers, it's going to be a tough hit, because I think you just desperately need a legit guy down the middle. And there's other guys you could fall back on, like Andrew Kopp or what have you. But if you're looking for a legit top 6 guy you don't have to worry about in the coming years, Hertl makes so much sense.
And he's such a good 200-foot player. And again, you think of like Hall, Hertl, Pastrnak this year, or next year if you did Marchand, Hertl, and Pastrnak or Smith or whomever on that right side, like just fits. Like that fits. That's like, as on D, it's different. You can kind of plug in any top 4 left shot defensemen and they'll work, right? But with forwards, it's a bit different, just given how they play systems and stuff like that. But God, Tomas Hertl would fit great. That would be such a good fit on that top line or the second line. So we'll see with that. I think that's going to be a very developing thing. I guarantee we're going to hear the Bruins are in on him a bunch. You hope it's like not a Mark Stone situation where the package ends up not being that big of a deal, and you could have done it. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And again, if you have to give up Studnicka or Beecher, do it. Do it. I have no issue with that. I don't think anyone has any issue with that. And again, even if Studnicka and Beecher turned into amazing players, it's like, well, they didn't look like amazing players when they were in the system. Lastly, on today's episode, the story of the day. This is the only concrete news we're discussing today. I woke up this morning and was shocked to see that the Philadelphia Flyers re-signed inked Ristolainen into an extension. 5 years, $5.1 million annually. Not total, but annually. And I think that might actually be the worst contract in the league now. Potentially. Just from a value perspective. Terrible.
It's, for as much as I think Bruins fans rip their hair out when you look at like personnel decisions or the future of this team, it probably does them maybe add some reassurance that there's so many teams that are just, I don't know where they're steering the ship except like into an iceberg. Like, I don't know
Straight Titanic.
I don't know what the hell they're thinking of with a guy like that who, again, you want to commit to being more physical, and he's physical, which means he also takes a lot of penalties. But, and again, like there's, you see so much discourse over Ristolainen over like, well, the analytics don't say everything. Whatever, you can make that case, and I think it's important to add context for any player in terms of what their underlying stats are. But have you watched him play? Because, oh my God, he ain't that good.
The analytics prove the eye test in this
Yes,
game.
yeah. So the fact that they're committing to him, they already overpaid for him last year when they gave up a first-round pick to bring him on board for a team that was going nowhere, and now you're just doubling down. Like, at some point, it's easy just to like bite the bullet and be like, "Yeah, no, it didn't work. Move on." Like, it's better just to do that, because the fact that now I think I saw rumors that they were looking at moving Travis Sanheim, who is a very good left shot defenseman, in place of Ristolainen. I got nothing. Evan. Philly's gonna Philly.
The Philly is gonna Philly, and I said this on Twitter. Like they might be the most mediocre hockey team of my lifetime. Again, they went to the Cup once. They have been really bad. They've missed expectations because they keep just doing shitty personnel moves. And this is it. Like, this is as dumb as it gets. And you wonder, like, all these teams have analytics departments, right? And the analytics, again, these teams have are not that much different than Jay Fresh or Evolving Hockey or Dom. Like, they're all kind of similar. If everyone's showing 1% publicly, or 1% like WAR publicly, it is probably showing that in the front office of the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm just curious what they saw that said, well, we want to commit to him for 5 years at 5.1. Like, that to me is what's the wildest part. Again, I don't understand it. I don't get it. And I don't know if I don't know if the Flyers have spoken today about it. I don't know if they held a press conference about it. I haven't seen anything said about it. But, like, what in the world? If I'm Claude Giroux, I want to be in Colorado by tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Because that is heinous. So, yeah, wild that happened. I didn't, like, again, terrible defensive
Just remember, Bruins fans, it could always be worse.
It could always be worse. And that's the funny part. Is like, Coyle and John Moore, and even this Brandon Carlo deal's not looking so hot. But, like, my God, that is as bad as it gets. At least the deals that the Bruins handed out, like Coyle, and even if you wanted to put Carlo in that boat too, just because he's having kind of an off year, they all kind of deserved it at the time. Like, I know Coyle, they kind of projected a bit more, but Coyle was a valuable member of that 2019 team and looked to be a guy who could potentially be a top 6 center. Ristolainen just stinks. Like, there's nothing.
He's just not good. Like, he's just not good.
Ridiculous.
And again, when he has a hot hit, it's going to be like taking a penalty. Like, that's every time. Yes. That's all. Why do you think the Bruins have had Buffalo's number as along with the fact that they're not a good team, but they score a bunch of power play goals because usually Ristolainen was in the box. So, like, they're not a good team. Like, he's not a good player.
Somehow whenever I'm doing NCAA.com work, I'll always have my Xbox is right next to me. So I'll always have like an ESPN Plus hockey game on, whatever game's on. And the Flyers are like always on for some reason whenever I need to watch something. And I do watch a fair amount of the Flyers, and I can confirm Ristolainen is absolutely garbage. So one of those things that hilarious to us. I feel Flyers fans, but it does just kind of stink all around. What a crazy move by Chuck Fletcher. Anyways, Connor, what can the people look forward to over at Boston Sports Journal?
Yeah, we have a couple of features that are finally dropping the next couple of days. Had a few great conversations with Jeremy Swayman and Linus Olmark for a couple of longer-term stories that we're excited to release. So those should be out hopefully by this weekend. You can find all that over at bostonsportsjournal.com. So you can subscribe over at BSJ, please. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. Exclusive stuff. Connor got Olmark and Swayman to wrestle. It was just, to fight for this, literally fight for the starting job. It's a beat reporter. Yeah, that's what the job. Each other up.
Yeah.
And then they beat you up. So it was they had to do what they had to do.
Of course.
Anyways, make sure to go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Marinofsky. Both Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your day.